Shut up, dog.
All right, that was our introduction. The dog barked, and that means it's time to kick ass and take names. Or is it kick ass, chew bubblegum? We're all out of bubblegum, something like that. Welcome back to MythVision Podcast. I'm your host, Derek Lambert. I have a few special guests with us today. Professor Dave Explains. He's got a massive YouTube channel. Welcome back, my friend.
Thanks for having me.
And Aron Raw. We know Aron Raw. He's been around quite a bit, and he is always challenging superstitious claims. He wants to get to the facts using reason, logic, science, you name it. Welcome back, Aron. How are you doing, my friend?
It's all right. I'm inundated with dogs. What?
Just so everybody knows some context, you have a YouTube channel, Dave. On here, you have 2.5 million subscribers, man. Your stuff's grown since I first introduced you to MythVision. You were like 1.2. Now you're at 2.5.
Yeah, that was a while ago.
And you also have a Patreon for anyone who wants to support your work. They can go over there and support you that way. I suspect you have other ways in which people can help out.
Yeah, YouTube memberships, or there's all kinds of like little super thanks and whatever that people leave on the videos, yeah, that's about it.
The same goes for Aron. I hope you subscribe to both YouTube channels. Aron is always diving into evolution. I love his science stuff. In fact, that's why I got lost in a mini series of his over the years. And he also has a Patreon. You can support him there. And he's made it very clear to me. It's these two sources, you watching his videos and supporting through Patreon, that keeps him going. Any other options or ways in which people could support you?
Well, I can also accept PayPal donations, but those aren't as regular.
Yeah, me too. It's pretty rare.
Yeah.
If you believe in what these gentlemen say, or you like what they are doing, you can support them, and I hope you will. And consider also checking out MythVision's Patreon, however you pronounce it.
Patreon.
I've dropped like 50 videos in the last, 10, 15 days, and they're all not public. They're all hidden behind the paywall here for people who support us. So help support all three of us, the Trinity, the scientific Trinity, and welcome, guys.
Yeah,
seems you had a debate, Dave, recently. It was you and Dr. James Torr sang Kumbaya for 2 hours, just high-fiving each other, best friends, and everything.
A lovely affair.
I got a clip. Aron Raw's question. I heard through the grapevine, Aron Raw told me, that some Christians thought that his question was the dumbest question of all questions, something like that, right? I don't want to put words in your mouth, Aron, but supposedly people were making light of what you asked in the question section. Is that true?
Well, the believers are going to come up with whatever excuse because it's all some kind of a spin game, right?
Yeah.
So they don't understand the question. They certainly don't understand the reason behind the question. Whenever I have this same discussion that Professor Dave is debating or was debating that night, I always have to preface it with, let's set the stage first. This is what we know up to this point, because that's the part the creationists are arguing against. They're rejecting paleontology. They're rejecting deep time. They're rejecting radioisometric dating. They're rejecting all of that wholesale because they've got a magic book of fables. And they are determined to make believe what obviously is not true. And so any argument about the origin of life necessarily has to be couched in other scientific evidence. And if you open with that, we find out right away that they're just going to reject everything wholesale. So there's no point in even having discussion beyond this point.
Mm-hmm. I want to just warn, I guess, give you a tip if you're watching this now and you haven't watched the debate between Professor Dave and James Torr, Dr. James Torr. I hope you do. Go check it out on Professor Dave Explains channel and watch it yourself. We're not going to be reviewing nitpicky the whole episode here. In fact, I think Dave plans on doing that himself.
I'm going to do that. Yeah, okay. I'll release it next week.
Perfect.
I can say that of all the things I heard shouted or screamed like a married couple in a tirade, Kumbaya was not one of those words that I found intelligible.
I tell you what, I had to work through that debate over different times. It's a lot to take in. And I'm an ignoramus when it comes to chemistry. So like, for one, I'm already at a disadvantage of not understanding a lot of the lingo. but there was a lot going on, and it was much more than just the arguments, of course, in that debate. We'll get into some of that. But the first thing I want to mention is this whole argument that you bring up, Aron, and I'm coming at this as someone who's not scientifically literate on the level of you, both of you, but he wanted to throw up very early on this idea of the time argument. He wanted to go, don't give us the time of the gaps argument. And he threw this out there, and then Aron Ra's question came up. So can I play Aron's question real quick? And then I want us to dive into this because it's a simple common sense question. I think we should use another analogy to get to, and I'd love to get your thoughts. How's that sound, guys?
Sure.
Okay. Sorry, took like a whole walk around the mountain to kind of get my point out. Here we go.
If you want a clue,
let me switch my audio here real quick here. All right. Scratching that back a little bit. Oh, well, here we go.
A hydrophobic pocket.
we're over 30 seconds.
And essentially, my question to you is, do you admit
The comment
methodology is not prebiotically relevant? I was just getting a chemist to dunk on James. It's really funny.
Yeah, that's a dumb question that guy asked.
Next question.
if you want a clue, then we need a fact and evidence, right? So if we're talking about the origin of life and how this happens, one of the facts and evidence would be the combination of embryology and the molecular clock and the fossil record and so forth, and demonstrated observed evolution and everything, that we know that there's no vertebrates, no terrestrial vertebrates 300 million years ago. There's no land animals at all 400 million years ago. There's no vertebrates at all 500 million years ago, and so on. Protists at best are maybe 1 billion years ago, and prior to that,
We're at 30 seconds.
First microscopic anything's alive would be 3.8 billion years ago, and so there's nothing multicellular for that whole billion years. Wouldn't that be an indication that it happened, since prior to that there's nothing at all?
Okay, I know you guys probably have stuff to say, so please give me 1 second to give my thoughts here. Aron, you live in Texas. Where do you live, Dave?
Los Angeles.
Los Angeles. Okay. I live in Washington State. If I were to fly to you in Los Angeles, it would take me 2.5 hours. To get to Texas, I think it's like 3.5, something like that. If I was just talking to you and you knew I was here, okay, and I ended up on your couch, like in an hour or two or something crazy, like what the heck just happened? So how did he get here? You wouldn't automatically think time machine or wizard somehow teleported me or something like that. You would probably start using deductive reasoning. You'd probably go, all right, maybe he knows someone who has a private jet. Maybe he took a flight and this flight had a direct flight, somehow went faster than usual. The pilot hadn't heard. You would use natural world reasoning to deduce, how did he end up on my couch? Now imagine I was dead and I couldn't be examined. You couldn't ask me questions, but I just am on your couch. I got there somehow. Now, life is here. Life got here somehow. And while James Tour continuously does the scientific, we don't know. He likes to throw the we don't know, and I feel like he's hiding behind that. Ultimately, though, we're here. How did we get here? And using what you just asked there, Aron, it seems common sense to me. We would look for natural processes, even if we don't know the exact model in which actually fits the criteria. One of those is more probable. Abiogenesis is more probable than any alternative aliens came and planted it, or a God with a wand or God spoke kind of thing. Wouldn't we all agree that that would be the most common sense approach?
James Tour had already admitted early on in the debate, in a more or less subtle way, that he favors the biblical mythology. So it wouldn't matter.
I had to prove it with a quote.
Okay, that's what it was. You're quoting him from somewhere else, so he didn't want to admit that.
No,
in the course of the debate.
It, but in a friendly audience, he outright says it. Yeah.
Yeah. So has he ever admitted to being a young Earth creationist? Because I've heard that from a number of other people.
So he hasn't flat out admitted, but he's made content where he goes, how old is the Earth? I don't know. I don't know how to. So he's either a young Earth creationist and won't come out and say it, or he's not a young Earth creationist, but he kind of like plays agnostic on it to keep, because he knows there's young Earth creationists in his flock. And he wants to hang on to him. So he can't go, no, the Earth is 4.6 billion years old, you idiot. He has to like, I'm not sure. I'm not a geologist. It's like, well, how about you trust what geologists say? Huh? How's that for a concept? But he'll say, I don't work in that field, so I don't know. But he doesn't work in origin of life research either. And he doesn't understand that field. So it's just a lot of hypocrisy. But anyway, no.
Here's the thing. The point of the debate is are we clueless? So that means all you need to do to win is to provide a clue.
Yeah.
A single fact and evidence, right? And it's better if you get a whole bunch of them. But the way I always open up this discussion, okay, here's our first clue. We have all of these things where none of these things show up until after some point in history. And we can go back down through the different developmental stages. You heard him counting out, that's 30 seconds. So I'm on a time limit here. When Tour dodged my question, and I'm in the last in line, and they're trying to hurry and get this massive crowd out of this building, I already know they're not going to allow me a follow-up. I'm not going to be able to pursue him. So when he says, hey, we got here somehow, and he's just not going to answer it at all. Yeah. So there's nowhere I can go with that.
The only problem with the question, I mean, it's a very commonsensical question, but what you were framing was that the evidence overwhelmingly suggests that all life evolved from a single common ancestor that we would call the first living organism. So the only problem is that that's not quite how the debate was framed. We were trying to discuss the event that led to that first common ancestor. So although he totally denies evolution too, and all of those DI guys, they all deny evolution as well, that's not what the discussion was. So he was able to evade that question because we were talking about bottom up to get to that first protocell that's the common ancestor of all life. So like, yeah, it totally makes sense what you said. Like everything is suggesting that life arose and then all life evolved from this thing, but it's just that you were looking at it from the flip side of that one event going forward, whereas everything was supposed to be framed in terms of getting to that. So that's why he was able to just dodge it and not care about it. So he gave,
basically, courtesy of your quote, we have his position, because I've noticed when you debate with like flat Earth people or young Earth creationists, they don't have a model. They don't have any explanation for fuck all ever.
No, nothing.
Right? It all comes down to whatever science can't explain, therefore is explained by magic. So unexplained means explained by magic. And yeah, they'll say that it's not magic, but supernatural miracles, enchantments, blessings, curses, necromancy, magic. If it's supernatural, it's magical. That's
why I was saying, Aron, imagine I was on your couch in, let's say, an hour and a half or 2 hours, but a typical regular flight takes 3.5. Let's just play that game. You're still not going to go, damn, we found a time machine or somehow a portal that he.
Did you catch a ride in an F-16?
Right.
I may have.
You lied. You were not actually at home. That was pre-recorded footage or something. There's
anything's more possible or more plausible than the magical one.
So one of the things I would have hit him on because of Farina's quote, he's going to go with the biblical mythology. Hit him on that first. We get to the other stuff when we get there, but first we set the stage. So he has to then deny all of this evidence. If it's not a clue? I mean, we have 80% of the history of life on Earth is microscopic and microbial. That implies something, So that's data that must be considered. But he's not going to consider that. What Tours said instead in another one of Farina's quotes from him, and this was stunningly stupid. James Tour gave a definition of abiogenesis that was actually a grotesque chick-tract parody of evolution, wherein he said the second dumbest thing I've ever heard a creationist say to describe evolution / abiogenesis. He says a bunch of molecules get together to become slithering creatures, and then those molecules crawl out of the water.
Yeah.
This is a guy with a PhD.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's one of the dumbest lies he tells. And so I made it a point in one of my prompts to hammer him on some of these lies that he tells all the time. And I got that quote, and it was a direct quote, and I put it on a slide, and I highlighted in red the parts that matter, and I showed he says that's what all the textbooks say. And so I hammered him and said, where are the textbooks? Show me a textbook that says this. He can't do it. He goes, here's the list of textbooks. That's just a list of textbooks. Show me a page where it says that. I'm showing you what the textbooks actually say. And he just kept squirming and squirming. And that's where he started to really ramp up the volume, because he knows he's lying, but he's a narcissist. So he cannot admit that he has lied. So he has to like always be right. But it's just undeniable that he lies about what's in the textbooks. And he says it all the time. So he started to get really angry because I was exposing numerous lies.
If you make a claim of fact or truth, you're going to assert that something is true or the truth, and it's not evidently true, and there's no way you could possibly know that either way. There's two ways to describe that. That's either faith or it's lies. And I don't know that there's a way to distinguish between the two.
Oh, it's for sure lies. I mean,
what's the difference?
Say that. Yeah,
you're claiming things to be true that are not true.
Mm-hmm.
It's not evidently true. There's no evidence to show it, and there's no way you could know that either. So your faith is all about pretending to know what you don't know, which is itself a lie. Claiming facts that are not facts, which is also a lie.
But this is very easy to know. You could look in the books and see that they don't say that.
So I've been offering to prove evolution to the creationists' own satisfaction, because you can't prove anything mathematically in science, as you know, but you can prove something to somebody's satisfaction, doing a colloquial definition. And I always say that, we're going to do this like in a legal context of an overwhelming preponderance of evidence beyond reasonable doubt. But in the very few times that I've made that challenge, and the creationists haven't just scattered like cockroaches when you turn on the kitchen light, because they are afraid of the light of reason. In the very few instances where one has such emboldened faith that they would actually take on the challenge, they plummet, face plant right at the very beginning, because we open with definitions. And they're straw men. Doesn't work. They have to show academic science sources that this is what is being taught. Here it is from Berkeley University Evolution 101. Here it is from Stanford or whatever. Here are the citations. Here's how they define evolution. Funny, it's never one kind of thing changing into another fundamentally different kind of thing. It's never life from non-life. It's not everything from nothing.
It's not Darwinism.
It's not Darwinism. Exactly. So I can never get them to admit the fact already demonstrated that here's the definition from all these different universities, all these different textbooks. Here's the direct quotations from all of them. Do you understand and accept that this is the definition and not the one that you got from the convicted fraud with the phony degree?
Right. Not Answers in Genesis straw man version. Right.
Yeah. So right there is where the debate ends.
Yeah, because they don't even understand any of the words that you used.
Are you suggesting that Dr. Tor doesn't, I mean, obviously in his rhetoric, it sounds this way, but are you suggesting he doesn't even really know what evolution is? Or is he purposely downplaying it?
Well, no, I mean, to be fair, okay, two things about this. We are getting a little bit sidetracked because although there is some overlap, these are legitimately two different, evolutionary biology is not the same as molecular biology and origin of life research, but there is overlap. As we are learning, there is chemical evolution. Systems of molecules can evolve. So Darwinian principles do emerge prior to the emergence of a living organism. That is demonstrated empirically and is absolutely true. But these are still slightly different realms, right? Once you have life, and the way life evolves is a slightly different tier from the actual process of abiogenesis. So that's what the debate was about. I mean, it's all one. I mean, to the Discovery Institute, it's all the same thing.
Right.
It's just that Tor is the only guy they have that can open his mouth with any perceived credibility about abiogenesis because he's a chemist. All the other guys are idiots. I mean, they can't talk about this. They can't talk about abiogenesis. They have they don't even have the vernacular. They don't have the vocabulary. Only Tor does. I mean, he's lying the whole time. But I mean, you think Stephen Meyer could have had this debate with me? You think Casey Luskin could have had this debate with me? It would have been a joke. But Tor, he can use the vernacular because he's a chemist. Again, he's lying the whole time, but he can offer the facade of knowledge because he is a chemist, right? And so everybody just eats it up. He must be right. He must be right. But
Well,
So
he must be right because he agrees with me.
Yeah.
So they will tout his credentials as a legitimate PhD if he agrees with them.
sure,
But they will discount and dismiss
thousands
and
of others.
ignore
Yeah,
the entire global international consensus of all the best educated expert specialists anywhere
in
ever,
that field,
all of whom
which he doesn't work in.
exactly
Yep.
because they don't agree with him, and
Correct.
then
Yeah.
they will side with the convicted fraud with the phony degree.
Oh yeah, Kent or whoever.
Yeah. So to get back on that, you mentioned chemical evolution, and while that phrase does exist
Mhm.
and has been used, and abiogenesis is not an actual scientific nomenclature, is not a term. Origin of life research is the way they describe it. Abiogenesis is kind of an antiquated word, but I know that the believers understand what this means. We're talking about something as distinguished from, because this is important too, distinguished from spontaneous generation. It is hugely frustrating to me that if you look up most English dictionaries, if you look up abiogenesis, it will give the description of spontaneous, or it'll give a cursory description of spontaneous
this was
generation.
disproven in the 18th century. It's
it conflates the two.
anything.
There's no relationship
None
between abiogenesis and spontaneous generation.
Yeah.
Spontaneous generation, because
magic.
we have to cover this for anybody watching. Spontaneous generation is a supernatural belief in life force, what George Stahl coined as vitalism, the idea that life is animated by a vaporous spirit, and that when the living thing dies, not only does the body rot, return to the dust and so forth, but the spirit within the body also rots. But the way that it rots, instead of turning to dust, because it can't turn to dust, life has to turn into other forms of life. And so this is where they come up with the idea that maggots, mold, and mice are produced by decaying life force.
Yeah, this all happened because we would observe that maggots would appear in rotting flesh, and so some people thought, hey, that's just a thing that happens. Maggots just magically appear in rotting flesh, and then Francesco Redi thought, well, no, hang on, let me isolate it. So then he realized, oh, flies come and lay eggs, and that's where the maggots come from. So if flies can't land and do that, that doesn't happen. So it's not the case that maggots magically appear. It's from flies that lay the eggs. So that was in the 1600s or something like that, or maybe 1700s, I forget. But again, this has absolutely nothing to do. We didn't even know that molecules exist, not by a long shot back then. It has nothing to do with abiogenesis as a process of chemical evolution. So it's just, when people throw that out there, I'm like, what are you talking about?
Yeah. So abiogenesis, the way that word is used, and it is separate, as always has been separate. That word was coined, I think, before spontaneous generation was ultimately disproved. So the name or the word came from Huxley, and then there's a story that traces back to Rudolf Virchow, who famously he created the law of biogenesis, where he said that cells come from cells. And then somebody asked him, well, where do diseased cells come from? And he says, diseased cells come from diseased cells. But then he had to reflect on that and realize that there had to be a first diseased cell that was not already initially diseased. And this caused him to reflect on his other pondering too, that there obviously had to be a first cell that wasn't already alive. Now, Virchow was an atheist. So he did not like Darwin's theory, because he's a contemporary, and so this was a new concept for him. He's a cell biologist. He doesn't know population genetics and all like that. Nobody did. But he had to concede. His law of biogenesis is not a law. And at the same time, another contemporary, Ernst Haeckel, also came out with the biogenetic law, almost the same name, right? Where ontogeny recapitulates phylogeny. Just because you call it a law, don't make it a law. And so both the law of biogenesis and the biogenetic law, which are both very different from each other, have both fallen apart because of a fundamental technicality. The law has to be very specific, and it can't. You don't want to add anything to it, because you might add a detriment that will tear it apart.
I mean, life begets life, but at one point, non-life begat life.
Right.
That's
exactly.
Yes.
That's
and so the way that
happens.
The way that happens is not by tearing open a Kool-Aid mix and adding water in a blender, like the creationists like to imagine, and then out pops a rabbit, right? So abiogenesis research is actually It's a collection of many different hypotheses, most of which have been verified, that almost all of which could be true at the same time as part of this study. Like panspermia is one that, elements of life could have come from outer space, but you know what? It's not necessary. Everything we need is already here.
Yeah.
So we don't need
or a combination, right? There's prebiotic synthetic pathways and seeding from meteors. Meteors definitely brought organic molecules to Earth. That's a fact. We see them now and we collect them. And there's other stuff there too. There's L amino acids predominate over R on meteors. So why is that? And is that something that was amplified by some mechanism to produce whether it was an antioppurity prior to polymerization, or if it was just a bias and then that was amplified in the polymers? Like, this is the thing about James, is like, there's all of this literature that talks about all of these things, and he just pretends that none of it exists. That's basically his entire approach.
We're supposed to avoid psychoanalyzing here. But it's almost inevitable. Like,
well, what are you gonna do when he says we have nobody has figured out any way to do this, and then there's tons of papers where people have figured out how to do this? I mean,
so he ran to that
just go to Google Scholar and search for it, but he doesn't want to. He's hiding from it. You know what I mean?
Well, so let me ask you this: what do you think he was doing when he kept going to that? I think he was trying to whip his stuff out and say, "I got a bigger one than you."
I'll tell you what he was doing.
I know exactly what he's doing. Yeah.
What?
Yeah. Well, so he's trying to narrow the parameters as much as possible. So he's trying to set the stage for Farina. Now, you go with the open topic, we don't have a clue. He then has to redefine things because he walked into a trap. All Dave has to do is produce any number of facts and evidence that indicate this. Any number, and he wins. That's it. So Tour then has to get him to do a trick, which the studies that I've read, like especially the one from Sutherland, that was a favorite one where they're talking about how you have these spontaneous development of ribonucleotides, where you have this cycle of inundation, dehydration, and irradiation, where these I forget what the word for the constituent component was, but in the study it said that in its continuing cycle it become increasingly complex, and then when you add a phosphate at the right moment, you spontaneously have ribonucleotides. It just has to match a level of complexity. How could Farina ever have demonstrated any part of that in the specific line of chemistry that Tour? So Tour has put him in a shoebox and said, you can't explain anything else. You've only got to explain this one thing, and this study doesn't cover that thing. And so I'm the only one that So that was the trick.
There's a bunch of aspects to it. Number one, if he wants somebody to show small molecules to RNA or something like that, number one, I mean, the schemes that you'd have to draw, it would take half an hour.
For a macromolecule?
From small molecules to RNA, right?
You don't have enough chalkboard.
No, there's not even enough room. Polypeptides or polynucleotides, either of those. If we're talking about all of the reactions prebiotically to get there, not only would it take too much room, part of it has to do with like catalytic mineral surfaces. So now I'm like doing artwork, and it's absolutely ridiculous to expect that. And number two, it's in the papers. And I showed the schemes. So what he was doing was posturing for his followers, going like, I'm the smart professor. I can draw an amino acid, which a freshman undergraduate can do. I'm so smart. I drew an amino acid, which, by the way, he wrote aspartic acid and he kept calling it arginine. So he doesn't even know what he's talking about. But I can draw a molecule and Dave can't draw a molecule. That's basically what he's trying to do, knowing that there's no reason for me to draw anything. We're supposed to be discussing the primary scientific literature, and the schemes are in the papers. So it would take way too long to draw it. Not even enough room. And it's just, it was a complete, it was just a stunt. It was a stunt, and it worked
to try and make
followers.
you look like you don't know what you're talking about. And of course, I didn't know what the hell he was drawing. So, but I already
amino acids, like it's so.
I'm just saying, I don't
see how he's limited. He's got Farina limited. We couldn't go to any of the stuff. You'd have to go to one that specifically only dealt with amino acids, and then even those studies wouldn't have been able to provide Farina an opportunity to do the illustration that Tour is commanding him to do.
Well, right, but that's
So
also why he whined about the side chains, because I had showed him many papers. So in his content, he denied any prebiotically plausible aqueous peptide synthesis. He was just like, "Nope, you can't do it. Show me the references." I show him the references in his next series. He goes, "You didn't do it," and it just doesn't show any of the papers I show. So I brought those papers. He understands now he's screwed. He can't just go, "This is impossible." So he had to fix it. He had to move the goalposts immediately and focus on the side chains. So he drew 2 amino acids with highly reactive side chains, right? You've got a carboxylate moiety and you've got an amino moiety. So those are gonna maybe mess up the reaction. But yet I had papers ready for that too. So he started whining about those papers. And
yeah,
then,
I got to give you credit for that, for having everything on the ready, so that as soon as he said
Yeah.
you can't show this, you hit a button and there it is.
it's like 100 papers. I don't know what he's going to lie about or what he's going to complain about. See, this is what people need to understand, is that I was at the extreme disadvantage, because he can lie about anything. He can just go, "Nope, nobody has done that." Well, yes, they have, and I have to be ready to prove him wrong. So I have to have all of the papers. I have to have everything ready to go. And every time I was like, "Nope, here's a study, here's a study, here's a study." But then the thing is that that's 100 papers, so I can't take screenshots of every single section of every single paper. It would make the slideshow unnavigable. So there were moments where I go, like, okay, I don't have the exact scheme you're looking for. I guess I could quit the slideshow and pull up the paper and try to search for it. But then he's just running the clock out, right? It's just, it's like, it's a mess either way. So yeah, it got a little dicey where he was just like, "You can't show me the data." And it's like, dude, this is what the paper is about. All proteinogenic side chains. Powner got polymerization of amino acids with all proteinogenic side chains, lysine, aspartic acid, all of them. Can you read what this says? And he's like, "Well, I need a data table." And it's like, and then everybody's like, "Oh, you don't know the paper. You just read the abstract." It's like, because the abstract proves him wrong, man. I don't know what to tell you. All proteinogenic side chains. If you don't know what those words mean, I can't help you. They prove him wrong. You know what I mean?
Meanwhile, Tour is saying that the abstract, that these professional scientists in the abstract are lying, that it's all part of the scam, that they are all, that he literally said that the entire worldwide scientific community that is involved in this research are involved in a massive cohesive
corruption.
fraud. It's a
scam.
conspiracy.
Yeah.
So this is what, before we get to super chats, and we're going to get there, I want to ask
we
you.
haven't even gotten started in our conversation yet.
Exactly. I know we've got so
I wanted
much.
to want to throw in one other thing before we get too far sidetracked. He mentioned chemical evolution. When unless otherwise specified, because you can talk about different type, you can have some other word, an adjective before the word evolution, but if you just say evolution itself, by itself, that word, if scientists don't have any other thing to talk about specifically what they're talking about, they're not just talking about any old change over time. They are talking specifically about
biological
population genetics.
Yeah.
Right? The theory of evolution, Darwin's theory, it has nothing at all to do with the origin of life or the origin of space or time or anything else.
Yeah.
Creationists always there's many different levels of evolution, and you said chemical evolution. So you're just feeding the trailer trash.
You just impersonated someone. Go ahead.
Yeah, they're trying to shift the burden so that but it's just that after the fact, we have realized, once we realize that Darwinian principles apply to sets of molecules, then it becomes an apt title. But you're right that it's just it's a parlor trick for creationists to try.
When I said trailer trash, by the way, I wasn't referring to people in a certain financial set. I was talking about where Kent Hovind got his degree.
Correct. Yeah.
So the guy that they had, the chemist, it sounded like he was a chemist who was supposed to fact check you. What was that about, Dave? That was odd. I'm like, hold on, you have a guy who's going to not let you get off the hook about some things? What did you know that was going to happen? And
I suspected it. I let James pick the moderator because I was like, I don't care. You do whatever you want, and I'll come there and bury you. And so obviously the moderator was in his pocket. He tried to correct me 3 times, and all 3 times he was wrong. All 3 times he was wrong. First, he tried to talk about the 13C NMR spectrum, where Benner had gotten ribose on borate minerals, which is why he got ribose borate, because it reacted on borate minerals. And he goes, "Oh, the 13C NMR, we usually don't include boric acid, or we don't do that with borates." I'm like, yeah, the reaction was run on borate minerals. That's why it was ribose borate. Why did you just open your mouth about that? The second time he was talking about the functional ribozymes. He's like, so ribozymes either have to be mRNA or and I was like, what are you talking about? You're talking about extant cells. We're talking about abiogenesis. What are you saying? Why are you opening your mouth right now? But it's like, he has to say something, and then the fans are like, Dave is pushing back against the moderator. I'm like, yeah, because he has no clue what he's talking about.
Yeah,
I don't know what
I remember those. I remember a couple of those corrections, but for the most part, it looked to the audience like you had been corrected, which was unfortunate. I do remember when you were explaining to them, we're talking about before we have a biology to speak of, because that's the point of the debate. And you kind of put the moderator in his place there.
Yeah. The fact that he said mRNA, I was like, oh my God, you have no clue what you're talking about. What are you talking about?
In order to have mitochondria, you first have to have the bacteria that became mitochondria. Endosymbiosis.
Well, messenger RNA we're talking about. But anyway, messenger RNA is a feature of modern cells. You know what I mean? It has nothing to do with abiogenesis, right? We're talking about catalytic RNA strands that can perform all kinds of different functions. Has nothing to do with mRNA. So
I got one more for
totally
you before you guys feel free to get your stuff off your chest. But there's some super chats that overlap some of the things we discussed, Aron, before we ended up going live. But my one question is, to put it very simply, Christians trust the authority of Christian men and women often. I'm not saying all, okay? Don't let me pigeonhole and try and act like all Christians do this. I'm sure that the same goes for people who aren't Christians. They hear someone who's in their camp, kind of part of their tribe. They listen and they agree. That seems to be a lot of what was going on and what Tor does. It's not just in your debate. It's on his channel. I'm a man of God, a man of faith. Jesus is Lord. God created the world and that. So whatever he's going to say, they're already going to kind of want to lean in that direction.
What a great guy.
Exactly.
I want to push back on that. On that.
Go ahead.
What I've noticed is the creationists they can be old Earth, they can be young Earth, they can be flat Earth. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what they say or how wrong it is or how immediately you can prove that it's wrong. They're all going to rally their wagons together because we're going against God versus no God.
Got it.
That's what it all comes down to. When I had an opportunity, my first debate, I got to choose the moderators, and I chose a geneticist, a geologist, and a paleontologist, all of whom were, one of them was on the Human Genome Project, and the other two were relatively famous. And I chose all Christians because I wanted to make sure that if my opponent says something stupid about genetics and paleontology or whatever, that these other people would be able to correct him. But that's not what they did. Instead, they circled their wagons against the unbeliever. At my invitation, they're arguing against atheism. They don't correct each other. When that guy says anything and everything wrong, there is no correction from the believers. But let me say something wrong on any of my science videos, or worse, if I speak about history and I make a mistake. There are people in my own camp, they're atheists, who have written books, not kidding, not exaggerating, about how I made a mistake in something, a whole book on that. So it's not that the believers, they'll side with a great guy. He agrees with us, and then we'll just ignore everything. But on our side, oh hell no.
We're more skeptical of each other, even, and that's
why. If I put it in a political comparison, that's why George Santos is still up there and Al Franken isn't, because it's not the same on both sides.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I stand corrected. I want to make a point though that I think is, if we're using kind of this, what is the expert in the room saying, this Dr. James Tor completely, just to get your both of your take here before we go to super chats, he completely disagrees with the consensus, or really another way of asking is there a single serious academic in origin of life research who denies that a origin of life, abiogenesis, not in the way that I guess the false way of understanding it, but the idea that life came from non-life, not because of a creator necessarily. Is there a single serious one that's out there that denies this?
No. Why would they be working in the field if there was nothing to do in the field, right?
Is that why he attacks the whole category and wants to take down the whole field?
See, that's
the Bible
why
doesn't win, however you treat this. Okay, so we all believe that abiogenesis happened. The creationists, the religious people, the supernaturalists, the superstitious, if you want, they believe that it happened magically and scientists accept that it must have happened naturally, right? But we all accept that there was a time when there was no life on this earth, and then there was. So by definition, that's abiogenesis. We're looking for a chemical abiogenesis. They're looking for a magical abiogenesis. And theirs comes with this whole other folklore that life was poofed out of nothing by a magic incantation, abracadabra, and it all happened relatively recently. Even in the old Earth model, it's still relatively you still don't have 2 billion years of microbes before anything develops. Typically, not even on the old Earth scale do you get that.
Yeah.
There's always some element of magic mixed in there.
So the problem is that James does have to deny an entire field of science, and the only way he can do it is by some narrative regarding corruption. That's why scam, lies. But in order to do that, to make it more credible, this is another one of the lies I slammed him on, was he has said origin of life research is a boutique field. There's only about a dozen people or a dozen teams working on it. Flat out lie. Thousands of people work in this field. So I hammered him on that lie over and over again, and he was squirming again. No, I meant that the people doing the Sutherland Pounder style of synthesis, there's only a dozen people working on that. You said origin of life research is a dozen people. This is a direct quote. And he, I don't know what to do. And that's why I started yelling, because I was just hammering these lies right into his face. Right.
So that would imply that Craig Venters, that would imply that Craig Venters' team alone is only like a dozen people.
Yeah. But anyway,
and then
Venters
Sutherland's
is a
team alone.
biologist. He's not even really an origin of life researcher. But I mean, even if you count teams, there's hundreds and hundreds of teams. I mean, in every country, all over the place. So his narrative falls apart. You can't say all thousands of these people in every country in the world are all lying or corrupt or stupid, right? It doesn't make any sense. He needs.
Well, how does NASA hide the Earth is flat, though, Dave?
Exactly. Yeah.
I mean, come on, man.
It's flat Earth level conspiracy. So the textbook thing, the number of people working in the field thing, I really wanted to just shove that in his face as aggressively as possible, because it's like, look, the guy is misrepresenting the entire field in this abominable way. And I'm not going to let him get away with that. I'm going to expose this live in front of his face, in front of these people. And, he's a narcissist, so he wouldn't admit it, but he got real triggered by it. And then that was what ended up humiliating him even more than anything I said.
Have you noticed how narcissism is correlated with all of this, the whole religious movement somehow? And the debate that you had with Tor reminds me of so many debates that I've had myself, and also like when they grilled Behe on the Kitzmiller versus Dover trial, when he said that he's arguing for irreducible complexity. He says that science will never have an explanation for this
bacterial flagellum, whatever.
And they immediately stack 51.
Oh, it was about the
published
immune system.
51 published books and peer-reviewed articles, all explaining that thing. 51 independent studies, all explaining that thing.
Yeah, and he goes.
And his argument is that it's not good enough because they can't admit error. That's the problem. They are absolutely wrong, but they cannot admit that they're wrong. So if I have a debate, and if I have a debate over transitional species, I will have them trying to diminish the minutia of what makes it transition. Maybe it's not really entirely 100% transitional, some kind of excuse. Beneficial mutation. Well, if it has a benefit, there must certainly be a deficit there somewhere. There has to be something wrong with it as well. And if there's anything wrong with it as well, if you have unbreakable bones, then they must be heavier and a little harder to swim. And therefore, we can't say that it's a benefit, right? Any excuse at all. That's what Tor was doing. He's trying to find any kind of minutia wherein he doesn't have to admit published studies by people he says are now involved in this massive global conspiracy.
Go into a super chat. We might as well get into Q&A. Thank you for the support, everybody, and tuning in. Hit the like button. Go check out Aron Ra and Professor Dave Explains YouTube channel. Subscribe. Check out the Patreon too to help support them. You can also help us out here. Danish Debater says, okay, sadly can't watch now, but Dave, what was the reason for the rhetoric and semantic choices you made, especially towards the audience, but also versus James and the moderator and in the emails?
I mean, I don't know what that means. Rhetoric, semantic choices. Towards the audience, they were heckling the shit out of me, so I put them in their place because they're idiots.
Were they being
James,
loud there, by the
oh
way?
yeah, no, it was. They
What
were.
happened was there was quite a lot of believers because of Tour. Of course, Tour wanted to stack the audience with his own
Yeah,
congregation.
he roped
The
off
room
several
was
rows.
absolutely full, and a lot of his people, his supporters, ended up in the overflow room. I understood there was like 80 Tour supporters that had to be locked in that other room. I was
Yeah.
almost locked in that other room, despite trying to get there an hour early. So I mean, they blocked me at the door, and I insisted until they let me in. Because they put the arm out in front of me. Okay, you're the last one. No, we're not playing this. I don't need a seat. Just stand and let me stand in the corner. But I'm getting in this room.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, so they were just heckling and booing every time. See, the thing is, semantic choices towards James. James is a liar. He's a pathological liar that exclusively lies about this field.
Yep.
So my strategy is to show how much he lies about the topic we're debating. And every time I would show his lies, I get boos, of course. And then every time we're talking about literature that they don't understand, they're like, "Oh, I got." So it's like you guys have no idea what you're talking about.
And that's where I have to contest you, unfortunately, because I've done the same thing. I mean, you and I have both debated Kent Hovind, right? So here, what's a more obvious example of a pathological liar? A guy who made every seminar for decades. He's constantly corrected on the same 5 major lies, and he keeps repeating those lies. He'll never, ever correct them. He knows they're wrong, but they've made him money, and he can't sell used cars and make that kind of money.
Correct.
Which is the only talent that he has.
That's right.
Right? But it's not a trick to show that a guy who has been convicted of dozens of counts of 3 different types of fraud, it's not a trick to show that that guy's a liar. But the problem is there's a whole lot of other people that are telling the same lies, but they haven't been convicted of anything. So what is necessary is you have to attack the lie. Show that it is a lie without necessarily saying that he is a liar. That everybody who says this is lying. That's the important thing, not just that one guy.
Yeah, so like to be more blunt, why the direct? Did you feel that? Because look, it's not my style, right? To go and like, someone might be lying and they might be a liar. But it's, I guess I'm different. Of course, I wouldn't be like that. I don't even debate. But if I did, I wouldn't be as direct. What was the mindset in going in? Because your presentation had that built into it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, I knew I was gonna. I mean, this is there's a couple years of build up here, and the amount of character assassination that he's thrown my way. I'm not gonna like come at this all happy rosy. But the thing is, when he is discussing this research, he's exclusively lying. So I need to demonstrate that fact that he is lying, and it's much easier to do that about things that everybody can understand, so that they can then extrapolate that to the research. So it's not that I just brought up like the textbook thing and the number of researchers thing. I also brought up research that he attacked from like Stephen Benner, where I show that like he misinterpreted the C13 NMR spectrum, or he like his strategy is to go through the supplemental section and pick out some technical detail and pretend it's a flaw when it's actually him just not understanding the experimental method, right? So it's not like I just went liar. I was like, here are all these very ultra specific ways that he has lied. This is priming you to understand that throughout the debate, when he has these objections about technical details of the paper, he is lying, right? You can't just blindly believe him because, oh, the smart molecule man said smart molecule words. He is perpetually lying, right? I needed that to be part of it. We're not going to come in and say, he's a smart guy, but here's some research. No. This guy's a pathological liar, right? That has to be made perfectly known, you know.
But we have to know why it is a lie, that the lie itself is indefensible no matter who says it.
Sure.
We know that creationists, know that creationists by their very job description are professional liars. They are determined to make believe what is not evidently true. They make claims of fact and claims of knowledge they don't have, both of which are lying. At best, they're asserting baseless speculation as if it's a matter of fact, which is also lying. My favorite quote from Abraham Lincoln, that he who asserts, he who makes an assertion without knowing whether it is true or false is guilty of falsehood, and the accidental truth of the assertion does not justify or excuse him. So when you tell me what Jesus does or how God loves me, or fuck all, if you can't show me the truth of it, there is no truth to it. You are lying. You should know that.
Yeah.
So we circled around, and I think we're kind of in agreement, but we're also like, I may not have done it that way. I guess I know.
Well,
Aaron and me
there
have
is
had
also-
our women in our lives would like, hey, tone it down a little, right?
I'm
And that-
scorched earth, man. I mean, it's like this is not a good faith discussion because he is not approaching it in good faith. So
No,
I
I
have
get
to
that.
expose the bad faith. I would never do this in a good faith discussion of anything. But
Well, I want that on the record, because I think that a lot of people who may not even have been, they might side with you at the end of the day in terms of the belief. I don't want people to walk away necessarily looking at you and just going, this guy's just a rude, he is just obnoxiously rude. I mean, he targeted the guy, he kept calling him a liar, this and that. But I've had conversations with you before. I don't know why, but I guess there's oil and water for some people.
I mean, look, the people have to get their priorities straight. James Tour is a guy who lies about a field of science because Jesus, and slanders researchers in the field. I mean, this is really, really inappropriate, unprofessional behavior. And he's been character assassinating and lying about me for years. That's why I brought that slide with all the insults. And notice what an unbelievable narcissist he is. I demonstrated that he kept saying Dave doesn't know chemistry. The man cannot understand chemistry. He can't read papers, blah, blah, blah. His content is a manure dump. And then I demonstrated through crowd applause that all of his students use my tutorials to pass his class. So this doesn't make sense. If I can explain chemistry better than James can to his students, how is it that I don't understand chemistry? And he would not concede that was an absolutely ridiculous thing for him to say. He would not concede an inch on the intense insults that he'd thrown at me in all of his content. He just won't do it. He can't do it. So
here's an important thing. And I tweeted when you did that zinger, because that was well played. But here's an important thing. Often we hear that evolution is a fraud. As a matter of fact, that was one of the chapters of my book on the foundational falsehoods of creationism. And so I offer a challenge to anybody who wants to hold this position. If you want to think that both sides are the same, because they are absolutely not. We're not talking about two sides of the same coin. We're not talking about two valid opinions. We're not talking about two possibilities. We're talking about fact versus fiction, truth versus lies, literally. So to make that explicitly clear, I would challenge anybody to, find me, name for me, shut up, dog, name for me any evolutionary scientist who ever lied while promoting evolution over creationism. Now, I know everybody's going to go to Ernst Haeckel, but I've already done videos on that. No, that's not the thing that you think it is. You don't know what you're talking about. But if you want the converse of that, is you give me you tell me the name, quote the lie verbatim, right? And the alternative side of that is if you name me one professional creationist who did not lie while promoting creationism over evolution. And in that case, you don't have to give me the lie. Just give me the name, and I'll start listing the lies for you. And I will show you how we know that they knew that not only that every claim they made is wrong, but how we know that they know that every claim is wrong.
Yeah. So it's very important for me to demonstrate that James Tour is of that ilk. He is that, right? He's not just this guy going, and I have some doubts. I have my chemistry expertise, and these are valid objections. No, they're not. No, they're not. It's a script of lies, just like he's Kent Hovind with a PhD, essentially. There's really no difference. Well, actually, I want to give him a little more charity. I think that he has deluded himself to the degree that he thinks he's right. I think Kent, okay, I'll pedal back, but he's no different than any of the Discovery Institute people. He just knows more about chemistry, but he uses
I got to tell you,
lie.
Dave, I've been criticized by believers. Believers don't care about facts. They will openly admit they don't care what the facts are, right? They don't care what the truth is. They have these like feel good little emotional things that they go by, and you're a meanie. And that means that he won the debate because he was nice. He gave you a gift at the beginning.
Except the thing is, he was shouting like a maniac. And so that kind of.
I'm not talking about as a reasonable person. I'm talking about what the audience of unreasonable people feel.
Unreasonable.
Not
but that's
think.
why it was I was so happy to trigger him into behaving that way, because it makes it so much more difficult for them to adopt that narrative. Many still do. Right. Because
you might have said he was a liar. You might have told the audience they have no fucking clue what they're talking about. You did directly say, I was like, did he just, I've never heard in a debate something like this yet. But
That's true.
But
I got another challenge for you for any creationists listening. Right, I've often made this challenge, and again, it's never been answered. Just like the one I just gave, never been answered. Show me one actual fact that is positively indicative of the creationist model. In fact, show me a creationist model, period. But then show a fact in support of it. Something we can both verify to be true, not something we have to believe on faith. Because somebody told me today that the evidence that they have is belief in Jesus. No, your belief is not evidence. Do we have to have like the definition of what evidence is? It's
DNA is too complicated. It's a code. Blah blah blah. Codes need a creator.
Exactly. That's all you're going to get is mind games or word games rather. But
I think
there's
he was
not.
calm.
Here's what I would suggest. We have a thing to be explained, and it is not the case that whatever science cannot explain, or that you don't know the scientific explanation yet, therefore it is evidence of magic. No, you have to show me the evidence of your magic imaginary friend. So here's the thing that needs to be explained. Here's the scientific data to support that. Now you show me your data that implies the magical alternative. And yes, I'm saying miracles, the Bible, whatever, supernatural, anything, hocus pocus, it's all magic. There is not one actual fact anywhere ever, nothing, nowhere that implies creationism. All there is this mountain of evidence that they pretend doesn't exist that contradicts that and promotes evolution and other sciences.
And they deny it, hence God of the gaps.
Yeah. Real quick, my simple point was like, you were really calm. Even though you were using very harsh words, you were very calm.
All true words.
There was a moment during that debate, and I mean, I watched it in 4 different sections. I could only stomach so much before I was like, dude, I got to turn this shit off. And then I played it some more. But there was this moment where he lost he looked crazy for a second. They had the camera on him, and he's just like,
that wasn't a second. That was like a half hour.
It was a lot, yeah.
But there was a peak moment I remember. I was like,
it's like this guy is gonna have an aneurysm in front of all of us. Like,
anyway,
I'm not gonna lie. That would have been a video moment.
Oh no, I'll be using some of those snippets for various purposes.
No, if he had had an aneurysm.
Oh, okay, yeah, that would be that'd be
because I was looking for that to happen.
I wouldn't have been surprised, but that wasn't the goal. But anyway, it's just this is like he whines. Oh, you can psychoanalyze me. I'm glad you can mind read. It's like, bro, you are an open book. Right? You have all of these facts pressing up against your faith and invalidating it, and you are going berserk. The turmoil in his mind is just unparalleled. This is why the outbursts occur. A rational person who all of their worldview is aligned does not behave that way. It just doesn't happen.
All right, now I got the next super chat here. Nitty, thank you for being a member. I really appreciate your support. Young Earth creationists are a cash cow through donation to get anyone to validate the Bible.
Correct.
Thank you, Nitty. Appreciate the support. I think you guys mentioned that several times during this already. Jerry Penna, forgive me if I butchered it, my friend. Thank you for the super chat. Pine Creek just exposed Tur as a liar. Did I say that right? Is it Tur?
Well, it's Tor, James Tor. That's misspelled, but whatever. We know who.
Okay, got it. Tor is a liar. Like Professor Dave. Tor said he never, as a scientist, I can't say God can't poof something into existence. And through science, says God clearly comes out.
Not sure I fully understand. I also don't know who Pine Creek is, but I'm not sure what this means. But the fact remains that James believes that that life arising was a divine act. He has expressed this publicly, and so I don't know what, God is there with his hands and he goes, okay, here we go. And I don't know. See, the thing is, I don't like, he is purposely ambiguous because from my understanding, he believes in Adam and Eve, right? The literal Adam and Eve mythology. So he's not thinking that God made a cell, but I think in order to appear even remotely scientific, he's talking about a single cell. At least that's the way he presents himself publicly. And then in private, or in his church groups, he's like, okay, Adam and Eve is the thing. But
what he really says is that God conducted a golem spell wherein you make a clay figurine and you breathe into it the breath of life, which means you do like basically CPR on your statue when it comes to life.
And then you take a rib.
Yeah. Rabbis admit that the golem spell is old rabbinic magic, right? Or old Semitic magic. And then, the pulling out of the rib, and then it's not even a clone spell. I don't know what is a transfiguration. It's a different kind of spell, but these are spells.
Yeah.
It's magic.
Men are not made of clay and women are not made of rib.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that, Jerry Icapod. I hope I'm saying it right this time. Glad Derek mispronounces Patreon like he does. I think I say Ichapod. I forget. Dave, love ya. I cringe when you said, as if I give a what any of you think. Any regrets?
I don't think I said exactly that. Maybe
I remember an F word directed at the audience.
I think I said something like, as if any of you have a fucking clue what we're talking about, because they don't. We were there talking about, I mean, it's not even the church people. It's even the science students. Like, we were talking about very esoteric stuff when we were talking about 2', 3' RNA nucleotide linkages. I mean, this is stuff that like you're even science students in the audience are probably like, okay, I don't know exactly what they're talking about. It's very esoteric stuff. So you better believe his church group. I mean, they don't know what RNA is. They have no clue. They don't know a single thing that we're talking about. But James goes, ba, 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 ba. Wow. And Dave goes, ba, 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 boo. It's like, you guys are idiots. And if you don't shut up, if you don't keep your face out of this, I'm going to call you out and shut you up myself. You don't.
So
you
bear in
shut
mind,
up hecklers.
Bear in mind when you're doing a debate, you're going to if the game is to win the debate, you have to win that audience.
Oh, but they're unwinnable. That group is unwinnable.
But no, they're not. If you had shown the lie without attacking the person. You don't have to attack the person. Show how this is a lie in such a way that people realize this can't be right.
Not that group.
And then they realize that guy is wrong.
Some people, but not that group. James could have conceded defeat, and they would have found a way to twist it and pretend he won.
And I get what you're saying. I have people in my own family.
I could have said to change the minds of those people.
People in my own family who would tell me something like that Trump never lied. Doesn't matter the 30,000 lies on record, but they never lied. And so I show a video of him bragging about what a good liar he is.
Right.
And there still isn't an admission.
Right. Yep. Same thing. Tour and Trump have a lot in common, and Tour fans and Trump followers have a lot in common. That's it.
Thank you for that super chat, my friend. Constellation Pegasus. Wait, that professor wouldn't answer the question of a 6,000-year-old Earth? Did I hear that correctly?
I mean, I don't know what. I mean,
the young Earth creationism idea. Has Tor ever been directly asked that?
Well, yeah. So he has a whole video, and the thumbnail has Earth and then young and old are on top of each other, blurry, as if to be like, how old is it? I don't know. So like, he's very receptive to young Earth rhetoric. He doesn't outright see. This is the thing with these guys. Like, he's like, I never called Dave stupid. Yeah, you didn't use the word stupid. You said all this other insulting crap. He doesn't outright say, I believe the Earth is 6,000 years old, but he's like, I don't know. Maybe it could be. What do I know? You know what I mean? He's very receptive to the young Earth crowd because that's a big part of his flock. So he can't dismiss them. He needs them in his camp. So, but he. I would love for somebody.
I would love for somebody to explain to me where the value is in having to make believe things that cannot be, that are not evidently true, that are not even possibly true, that you certainly know are not true. Because we've heard that minister say that if the Bible were to say that 2 + 2 = 5, I would believe it. William Jennings Bryan said in 100 years ago when he was running for president, he said, if the Bible said that Jonah swallowed the whale, I would believe it. So we know even when you have mathematic proof that it's wrong, they're going to make believe anyway.
Yeah.
Why? Why doesn't truth matter to these people?
I mean, if you want an honest answer, it's because they're afraid to die and their faith gives them hope of life after death. That's the honest answer, I think.
Or heaven or something. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Constellation, thank you for that. He said, what university does he teach at?
Rice University and I don't think he should get to. We'll see if there's any negative ramifications anytime soon for him.
Wow. What's going on with the machines and motors and cells? That engine has heats and a clutch in them. Gets the flagellum RPMs up pretty high.
Yeah, I don't know. That's all creationist lingo to try to liken a cell to an actual machine that humans build to imply that cells must also have been built. Anyway,
so
go to
my
Michael
biological,
my Michael Behe debunk has all that.
I'm sorry. If you look at a biological model of these things, it doesn't look like the way that the intelligent design people they will find, well, this aspect of this molecule represents or that this configuration would be equivalent to a stator. So we're going to call it a stator, and we're going to illustrate it so that it looks like a stator, so that you end up with a biological, what in real life looks like an absolute mess of macromolecules in a very organic shape. But in the depiction, it looks like a rotary motor that you bought at the home improvement depot.
Correct.
Because they want it to look intelligently designed. So they're going to misrepresent this however they can to come to that conclusion.
Precisely.
Thank you so much.
Accurate. Mm-hmm.
Usual, my dudes. Good seeing you on Speaker's Corner, via YouTube, I mean. Well, thank you so much for the support. Appreciate the love. Hangfa Shi, Dave, what do you think about maybe having taken up the chalk and erasing one of the sections he drew, and ask him how they found out what went there before they found it out, since he relies on, I think, God of the Gaps.
God of the Gaps. I mean, that would have been kind of funny if I erased or crossed out some of the clues. I mean, whatever. It's like, I don't like, at the end, I was just so like fed up with his dumb stunt that I was like, okay, should I write not clueless and then I win, I guess? Okay, well, let me do that. So that was a fun moment, I guess. But I mean, it's like, I don't want to play games. Like, he's the one playing games, right? He just was like, I'm going to write these 5 things and I'm going to write clueless whenever I want, and everyone will cheer no matter what Dave says. I'm going to write clueless and proclaim myself the winner. And that's exactly what he did. It's just a stunt, but yeah, I don't know. I mean, I guess it could have been funny if I was like, no, not clueless. I mean, here's the thing, like, it's so ridiculous for him, like for polypeptides and polynucleotides. We were discussing research of prebiotically plausible polypeptide and polynucleotide synthesis. So, because he was whining about the side chains or about the 2' 3' linkage, that doesn't even negate the fact that these syntheses exist. So that he wrote clueless after we just discussed all this research that demonstrated that it can happen is just like mind-boggling. It's just bananas that he will do that. You know what I mean?
Again, I either flew on an airplane, lied about where I was at when I got to your couch, or abracadabra. And Aron's magical position there makes the most sense. Come on. Yeah. Thank you so much for that, Hangfa. Michael Gartner, Tor misrepresenting Cronin. Ari's scam was telling. He left out Cronin saying it was tongue and cheek, and I meant it as tongue and cheek and more.
Yeah, and then he goes on to Lee made a little bit of a statement that I'm going to include in my review video. But I mean, that is a stunning display that just shows how unwilling James is to have a good faith conversation, that he's going to quote mine to that degree, that an origin of life researcher said a joke in a tweet, and I'm going to use that to pretend that he's saying all origin of life research is invalid. It's like, what better demonstration is there that you're not going to have a good faith conversation here? You're going to just lie and misrepresent everything, misrepresent the field, misrepresent what people say. So it's like, why should I approach this as though there's going to be a good faith conversation? I know that there isn't. And that tweet was like the perfect example of that. So
I had a conversation in email with Dr. Richard Leakey, wherein he told me that he was talking about how creationists are dishonest operators and misquotation is the hallmark of their work. Yeah. And in the same email, he also described him as having astonishing stupidity.
If you don't mind, I'm asking a really private, personal question here, but Dave, are you in conversation with any scholars that are in original life research right now that are legit serious, that are telling you how insane some of this or how dishonest they're seeing what's going on the other side?
Of course, every single one. I mean, most of them are aware of it and just don't care.
Right. Right.
But they just don't want. I mean, they don't. Most don't want to get involved at all.
It's
But
drama, right?
yeah, well, they don't want to invite just all this harassment. But I've got about four. I got about four of them to make statements for the new. For the analysis. So
Ooh.
that's four new ones that he's going to have to go and expose, because anyone who goes on Dave's channel, I got to expose them. So he's going to have four more people to expose once I put that out, so he can have fun with that. And, he can keep digging that hole of everybody's a corrupt, everybody's a liar in this entire field. But anyway, I'm going to get some of those statements. Or I got them already. I'm making the video now.
As many critiques as I have of the debate and how things were done, I got to give you credit for your rebuttal on your video series for him, because I mean, Tour was faced with this. How do I continue? Because I guess changing my name is no longer an option.
Yeah, I mean, he has to go to cartoons and memes and pretending Stephen Benner is a fraud and Lee Cronin is a fraud, and it's just like I'm just backing him further and further and further into this corner, where after this debate and after my analysis of the debate, there's just no room left. I don't know what he's going to do next. I can't imagine he's going to stop, but it's just like the whole scientific community and anybody with any scientific inclination whatsoever is now acutely aware of what an unbelievable lying fraud this guy is. So it's not like it was 2 years ago, where it was like, this chemist guy saying some stuff, I don't know what he's saying. Now it's like, oh yeah, Dave annihilated this guy over like 12 videos. Like, he's a clown. Everybody knows it. What are you talking about? So
I get what you're saying about the sycophants, though, because I mean, Hovind followers will tell me how he destroyed me.
Well, flat earthers say that I got destroyed. I destroyed David Weiss, and then David Weiss puts out a video, I destroyed Professor Dave, and I'm like, he destroyed
what?
you.
I saw that. That was.
I didn't even watch it, but I don't know what the hell you're
I'm talking about you. I'm talking about the debate you had with that guy. I was like, dude, what in the world just happened? Two things. I emailed. So I saw an interview that was on Sean McDowell, Christian Apologist YouTube channel, with Professor Tor, James Tor. And he had an invitation at the end. He invited skeptics, non-believers, to email him, because he said he would come on their channels. He would present to them his evidence for the resurrection, and that he said like 80% of skeptic non-believers who listen to his story and his evidence again, for the resurrection, end up converting that same hour. I'm not kidding. This is what he said. So I, Derek Lambert, emailed him and said, I am interested in having this discussion. I'm just wanting to be sure that we can talk back and forth, that it's not a one-way street. He wrote me to decline and said, no, I'm not interested. Because, dude, if it's a serious academic in the field and they're critical, I mean, I have absolutely interviewed them more than once. And I know several hypotheses that are on a natural point of view, or even just skeptical, from the legendary, the full-on myth, to, hallucinogenic type, you name it, right? So everything under the sun is more plausible than this guy really rose from that. And even the whole swoon theory. He didn't really die. He was in the hole for 3 days and then he came out. I mean, all of that's more likely. He declined and he said, no, I said, if you'd let me have an hour to just talk. He wants to pretty much give his testimony.
Oh, he wants to lecture you.
He wants to lecture. Yeah. And tell his testimony or whatever it is. That's not what I was hoping to do. I was going to give some pushback and try to have a conversation, not a debate. He declined. And I actually think I emailed you that, but I can't remember if I sent that.
Yeah, I remember you.
But a number of people have asked to be on my channel to reason with me, and I'm all about that. I really am. I am eager to talk to people who don't agree with me about whatever, and well, there's got to be something I'm remotely interested in. There are some things I just don't care. But sometimes these people will come on. They're going to have a back and forth with me to try to get me to understand why they believe what they believe. And then they want to grandstand my forum so that they have their PowerPoint presentation, and they just need 20 minutes to tell me about the infallible truth of Islam and the Quran. I'm like, oh fuck, I'm not. No. Yeah, you speak from the top of your own fucking head.
Yeah.
And we'll go sentence by sentence and see how it plays.
Aron, listen how you're talking to the audience now, man. I'm just kidding. Oh, I had to do that to you, man.
Yeah, but this whole the pearl clutching, the tone policing thing, it's just a typical Christian thing where they're just like, I'm going to clutch my pearls because you said the F word and therefore nothing you're saying is
I
true.
heard
It's
them
just
through
pathetic.
the mic go, oh,
Yeah.
like, oh my God, he said the 4-letter word. How dare him?
It's like,
That
get
was
your
pretty-
priorities straight. This guy is a toxic influence on society, lies through his teeth, slanders researchers. But I said a naughty word. Give me a break. Grow up.
Yeah. So
Constellation.
my next dog is going to be named Phuque.
Fuck you.
Okay.
I don't know. Constellation Pegasus. Cracker Jacks needs to have select boxes with a Rice University degree in them. Discovering Ancient History with Pat Lowinger said, yeah, but the 7-day cycle proves God. Of course, he's joking. He's a buddy of mine. And so we've had a guy actually say, because we all have 7 days in a week that we live by, that means this God who started the 7-day thing is the one in authority over creation. There's anything goes, right?
Can we talk about that just for a moment?
Sure.
So why does nothing match up the way it would if there would be an intelligent designer? Why is it 7 days? Why is a month not 28 days? Well, there's 1 month that's 28 days, but none of the rest of them, right? The rest of them are 30 or 31, whatever the hell, because it's all variable. Why is it 365 days? Why does nothing
365 and a
why is it-
quarter.
Why is it 24 hours and some change in a few seconds? And why is it changing all the time?
And what's a day before the sun even exists?
None of the divisions we have for anything imply that anybody with an intelligence set about setting that up with an intended design in mind.
It's humans recognizing natural cycles and trying to apply some kind of order with increasing success over time as it becomes more and more refined.
I'm literally writing, Otangelo is only a distraction.
Yeah, that guy's an idiot.
Oh my gosh, the Shroud of Turin has been... I've got a video, it's like 15 minutes long. It rips it in half.
It would be wonderful if I could end up... It would be wonderful if I would be in a thread like this, a discussion like we're having right now, and people like Otangelo wouldn't stink up the entire place like by pooping in the middle of a crowded room.
They pull their pants down. They literally don't even warn you. They just go, Turin! Shroud of Turin! A shroud of turd.
Nobody cares. Nobody cares about you, man.
Imnag, I wish I could watch the stream. Unfortunately, I'm super busy. Please keep calling out the lies. As always, I'm showing my support.
Rock on.
Yeah, I want to point out that people will debate me on various different topics, but they will never debate me on creationism. Not again. That's not happening anymore. So one of the Discovery Institute fellows, I don't remember which one, Stephen Meyer, whoever it was, but somebody posted on Twitter a few months ago that they had a debate scheduled for me. And my Twitter response to that was that, hey, somebody ought to tell me, because this is the first I've heard of it. I'm down.
Yeah.
But this is
Same with
honestly
James
the first
Stewart.
I've ever...
James Stewart announced a debate challenge on some loser apologist channel. I'm like, buddy, were you going to email me? Also in the Rice Thresher, he's like, oh, I apologize for shouting over Dave Farina in the student publication. He's like, you want to send that this way? You want to email me the apology? What good is it going out there? Like the guy can't do it.
I've spent a quarter of a century now arguing against creationism. And I'm not saying I'm done, but it's done. The reason they're not challenging me to debate anymore, the reason they're not going to challenge anybody to debate anymore. Now, you've got certain people who got their degree from a mail order catalog, and they're still trying to be relevant some way because it's the only way that they can keep slave labor building their retirement home. We all know who I'm talking about. But apart from people like that, there is no attempt, there's no facade at a legitimate creationist organization who's trying to promote any truth. No, they've all been called out to the point where they have no defense anymore. Period. It's done.
Yeah.
Now we just got to get the fucking senators and so forth to realize that, oh yeah, we lost this argument and everybody knows it. I guess I should pull my head out of my ass and maybe we should stop voting for people who think that snakes can talk.
You know, who fanboys over Erica from Guts at Gibbons channel? I eat her stuff up. I love the way she handles it, and she kicks all of their asses. They're buried. I don't even know where to find them now. They're buried.
I just had the honor. I just uploaded a video today in a collaboration with her, and she is amazing. She knows more because she's a PhD student. I mean, I just have a bachelor's, right? I mean, but she knows so much more about my field than I do. It's humbling and inspiring at the same time.
Yeah, she knows a ton about hominid species. Yeah, of course.
And Eric, if you're watching this at some point, just to let you know, thank you for trying to be here today. It would have been amazing to have you here, but we have to plan a recording soon, and hopefully I can get her to do a course at some point. But Hell V155, I'm just saying hell because I think that's what they meant to have in their name. Great debate. I enjoyed it, especially your choice of words. I suppose the question about your choice of rhetoric was about why you would directly curse at people.
That's not rhetoric. It's just they deserved it. But whatever. Whether I were to do that or not do that, it would not have influenced their conclusions.
I was given an opportunity to address a young Earth creationist church from inside their sanctuary during their session. So it was supposed to be a discussion, but they lied about. I know, shock, right? They lied about the setup for it. So it wasn't going to be an equal. It's not that we both have a discussion and the audience gets to listen. It's not that we both get to describe our positions so that the students will understand. Everything about how they sold this to me was a lie. So I was told that I would have 30 minutes to explain evolution to a church full of church, the homeschool type, church school type, Christian school, high schoolers. I'm going to explain evolution to that demographic, right? In their own church. I got 30 minutes to do that. I was all about that. And then when they realized that they had misspoke that they wrote the email out poorly and that I could fairly interpret it what they said to mean this, they're like, oh no. That's not what we meant at all. What we meant was we want to set you up on stage and we've got somebody with a bunch of prepared questions so that we can try to make you look like a fool, and you better be on your toes to not look like a fool. Which I think I did adequately well, but the whole thing was designed such that none of those high schoolers would have a clue what evolution is by the end. That was the expressed intent, was to keep the students confused.
Mm-hmm.
Mm. Thank you so much. Sorry. Thank you for that super chat. Chris McCarthy, have you heard of the PA world? I don't know if I'm saying that, PAH. Model for abiogenesis, proto-DNA base pairs aligning at the edge of a stack of polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbon sheets?
I have not heard anything like any of that. That's pretty interesting. I know that there's a lot of models. I know that RNA world kind of dominates, but there's also metabolism first and different kinds of models. Never heard of that. I mean, I think that most people are roughly in agreement that RNA was the first genetic material. But yeah, I don't know. Never heard of it. Sounds cool.
Thank you, Chris. Never heard of it myself.
I like that they said it's aromatic. So I guess if you put a number of these around the tub, I'm sure it would be a very pleasant ambiance.
Mm-hmm.
Danish debater coming back with another one. Thank you for the support. Got here quick. Thanks for the answer, Dave, Aron, and Derek. Agree with Aron and Derek. Hit my thoughts on the head. So I guess Danish kind of has a softer spot on how to approach people. And I can't say that Aron completely has it. Aron's told me his wonderful wife has kind of helped him like see the light a little, like, hey, you know. So he probably would be just like you, man, if it weren't for his wife always telling him, hey,
that's one way to put it. Yeah. Every time I come off stage, you said he was a stupid liar who lies because he's stupid. You know, that doesn't convince anybody, right?
But I also proved that he's a liar many times.
Yeah, you have. I think that, like what Aron's saying, I think if you have someone sitting on the fence, though, and they are offended or if this is offensive to them, that might give their cognitive dissonance reason to tuck back in instead of really just considering what you might say, because your data is on point. Like you're hitting the nail on the head. It's just, are we winning people over? And I think the sad part was that you're debating in a room where you're having to hear the mumbling and the constant groaning of people.
Yeah.
and that frustrated you even more on top of it?
I'll tell you what
maybe?
I got out of it. What I loved about this was it's very technical, right? So these are chemical names, and it's obviously, if Tour is arguing that we don't know anything about this, then we're clearly going to the pushing the envelope of scientific understanding. So it's not that extreme, but it sounds like it is when you've got these two guys who are throwing 5 and 6 syllable words at each other with such passion and at rapid fire. It was the most chaotic, passionate, maddening chemical discussion I've ever heard in my life. It's like they're speaking another language at some point. It becomes, yeah, it is a different language. It's like, and it becomes an old married couple. They were yelling at each other, past the audience too. And that, I'm sorry to say, is what I think a lot of the audience took out of that.
Sure,
They
but
couldn't
it's
understand.
inevitable when one party is going to be in bad faith and lie the whole time. It's
True,
just nothing can
and
be
that's
done.
by design. You know that.
Oh,
we
yeah.
know that.
So it felt like a
I got to
Jerry
hop off in
Springer.
like 2 minutes, by the way. Sorry.
Oh, do you? Okay, okay. It felt like a Jerry Springer episode. That's in a
Sure.
way, you know, pretty chaotic. But you stood your ground.
Okay. Well, if he's going to be like a Jerry Springer, then before you go,
He's got snakes behind him too. Be careful. Christy, thank you for becoming a new member. And then Lyle says, Dave, in Tour's opening statement, he put on the board chemicals and all its transformation. Can you explain in layman's term? Can you stillman what he was saying?
There's nothing to steal, man. He drew amino acids to go, look how smart I am. I can draw amino acids. And I know that there's no point for Dave to write anything, but I'm going to insist that he should anyway, and then just keep going back to that no matter how much research he shows that proves me wrong. That was the point of that whole facade.
Thank you, Lyle or Lyle. Forgive me if I butchered that. And then Dave, thank you for the super chat. Watched Aron and Erica this morning. Wow, loved the used car salesman joke. Before you go, I want to plug you here, Dave. Let me make sure I'm plugging you right because I got the wrong thing here shared. Getting your YouTube channel. People who are watching, we got 436 people watching right now. Do us a favor and go subscribe to Professor Dave Explains YouTube channel. You can watch the full debate here on his channel. Actually, I'm going to put it in the chat right now for everybody watching. And Dave, you have a Patreon as well. Can you tell us final words from you, man? You got to go, so I don't want to leave you, without something.
Come check out the channel. Yeah, please support. I will be continuing to expose and debunk all of these figures. I mean, I have a lot more to do with the Discovery Institute. I've really enjoyed becoming the biggest nail in their side. The damage control over there is just astounding. It's article after article after article of Dave as a big mean poopy head. But and then other people too, anti-vaxxers, and I debunk a lot of things. So not just creationists, but also a lot of creationists because I can't stand them.
I understand that. And you have a Patreon. Go support him there. Aron, you've got a YouTube channel and you do a lot of debunking as well.
I do. I've dedicated my career to trying to defend the students' rights not to be lied to. And that is how I summarize what creationism is. It's not as if these people think they're in good faith. It's not as if they really believe they're telling the truth. When pressed, a lot of them, and I mean all of the apologists, the professional apologists, will have to be cornered into admitting that they know, that they believe, they make believe what they want to believe because they want to believe it. That there's not any actual truth that they can show, and they don't care what the truth is.
We're all on Patreon. Help support us. Gentlemen, thank you for your time. I appreciate you staying around this long, Dave.
For sure.
We should be expecting some really good stuff coming from this debate on your show, correct?
Yeah, I got a couple more things to follow up. And then it's back to, obviously I'm continuing all my academic content, but then probably some other material on Discovery Institute frauds that I haven't hit yet.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Final words?
For me? No. Thanks a lot, guys. Keep supporting.
Thank you. Aron?
I've been doing this exclusively. This is my only means of support. So do check out patreon.com/ARONRA. I need all the help I can get.
And never forget, we are MythVision.
Son, do you want to know what the truth is? After this, there's no turning back. You take the blue pill and you wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to. You take the red pill and you stay in Wonderland, and I show you just how deep the rabbit hole goes. Remember, all I'm offering is the truth, nothing more.